oh, what was it? In November, I believe, or no, October for a GIS Day event in Iowa State University. And he's doing some good stuff at the University of Northern Iowa. So, um, Tommy, are you cool with people interrupting if they have questions or?
Oh, absolutely. I would love to treat this as a dialogue, so feel free to chime in.
Okay. And if someone has questions and they're not comfortable or don't have a microphone, as always, you can put something in the chat and I'll kind of chime up for them. So with that, I'll let you take over, Tommy.
Wonderful. Grateful to be able to talk with IJIC. I am super actually nervous about this because I have such a deep respect for GIS professionals, and hopefully I can share with you some of the ideas that have been kind of going around the geography education community, not just in Iowa, but elsewhere. And this is part of a larger dialogue among geography educators within NCGE. NCGE is kind of our flagship professional organization for geography educators. GIS professionals have, what is it, Ulysses or ERISA. This is kind of like that for us. And what we've been really trying to do is try to build a broad network of organizations dedicated to geography education. I am the co-coordinator alongside Dr. Lisa Tabor with the Geographic Alliance of Iowa. And what we've been really trying to do, especially in NCGE, is not just cultivate the alliances, but to actually build partnerships with other organizations. IJIC would be a really great possible organization, maybe to team up with NCGE, given this increased interest in education, especially GIS education. And so one of the big things that has kind of come up over the last, year or so is an interest in developing state-based atlases. We're starting to see more conversation amongst geography educators and leaders in geography education towards producing an atlas that is catered to K-12. Okay, so that means standard-based atlases, atlases that work across the curriculum. And so in Iowa, it would be wonderful if we could be able to take existing atlases and use those as a model for developing something within our state. And this is something that can be done as a collaboration amongst GIS professionals. We certainly don't want it to just be limited to geography educators. We'd love to see this as kind of a, work on behalf of me and Amy Logan and one of my graduate students. We'd love to see more involvement within this. So I'm going to give us a brief overview of some of the existing atlases, what we can learn from them. And, whenever I talk about geography, one of the key things that I try to do is be able to talk about geography in a way that people can understand. So I like to use analogies. And so I'll often describe geography to places as physicians are to patients. We try to figure out what are the components that make up places the way that a physician would try to understand the human anatomy. How do all of these different components work together, these different dimensions, the physical characteristics, the human characteristics, all coming together to create that distinct place, and then finding ways to make improvements. Okay, so we want to use the geographic perspective as a mode of problem solving. And so, geographers are really, and GIS professionals, we are kind of like place-based stewards. We try to find ways to use the geographic perspective to do good in the world. And so I believe that as stewards of places, we all are stewards of places, Iowans could really benefit from good map literacy. And so I like to describe atlases as kind of like the Gray's Anatomy of the world, right? It allows us to be able to visualize all of the dynamic complexities of places, regions, and the globe for that matter. And so what I also really like about maps is they incorporate a multiple forms of coding. So you're able to take in textual information, visual information, mathematical or numerical based information and integrate it to form a more complete whole of a particular issue. And so maps are really wonderful ways for students to cultivate deep knowledge in their learning. There tends to be a focus on math and reading within K-12, maps allow us to be able to integrate not just math and reading components, but also that real visual type of literacy that becomes so important in today's age. And so we're going to kind of go on a little journey from Nebraska to Virginia to California and then back to our home state of Iowa. And so Dr. Randy Bertolis, I was able to talk with him earlier this fall when I went to GeoFest in Omaha, Nebraska. GeoFest is kind of their day-long conference that is dedicated to geography education. And what a wonderfully participatory group that is. The geographic educators in Nebraska, they've really taken hold of trying to find ways to innovate with geography education. And so Dr. Bertolis has developed multiple editions of the Student Atlas of Nebraska. And so what they've been able to do is not only develop an atlas and make it available online, they've also been able to get money through the legislature to be able to print out thousands of physical copies of this atlas and get them into the hands of students across the state. So the atlas is divided into multiple chapters. You can actually go onto the GEON website and access every component of the atlas, including vocabulary cards. There are lesson plans that are already made for teachers that are available. So wonderful resource for teachers who might not necessarily have training in geography, which is a super common theme that happens throughout every state, is this lack of teacher preparation. These atlases provide kind of a nice shortcut to help teachers out when it comes to communicating about the geographic perspective. Okay, so this just gives you an overview of the State Atlas of Nebraska. What I really like about this, okay, so it's divided up into multiple chapters that are really important for Nebraska, including the physical or environmental geography, the human geography. There's the governmental aspects of these maps. And then when we scroll into the different pages, what's nice about them is that there's a landscape view. So a teacher could easily take a screen grab of this and put it in a PowerPoint presentation. So it's something that can be ready-made and used in multiple ways. And it also incorporates various landscapes along with these wonderfully simple maps. And what's really nice about these simple maps is that students can be able to draw on them, they can annotate them, use callouts, and so on. And so what Dr. Bertolis essentially did was spend multiple, about a year long of weekends in the GIS lab of his university to develop this atlas. And so it provides a really good starting point for a state that's looking to do something similar. California has had a long standing publication dedicated to the state atlas. So the California Geographic Alliance, back in 2011, they were able to get funding and use that funding to develop a wonderful series of maps, everything from land cover to annual precipitation, Spanish missions and California missions, Native American trade routes, major highways. And so there's a whole wide array of different types of maps that can really work well in aligning with various standards and so on. And here's just an overview of the table of contents of these maps. Now, these maps for the California State Atlas, because it was a formal publication, it's not as good in terms of printable quality, just going out and printing out a bunch of copies. But what is nice is they've been able to build upon these resources so that teachers could use story maps, for example. And so there are also lesson plans and other things that help accompany these materials in meaningful ways. Okay, so that is available for us to be able to look at when developing our own Iowa State Atlas, where we can try to use every part of the deer. If we have a collection of data in a database that we can use to develop static printable maps, why not include that in a story map or a series of web mapping applications? And then Virginia has their own series of atlases. They actually request that you buy a license, that schools buy a license through the Virginia Geographic Alliance. That helps provide revenue for the VGA, which is entirely self-funded right now. And so this could be a revenue generator in different ways. Ooh, looks like there are some gray boxes that are showing. Let's see if I can find a way to. Are there any gray?
Yeah, Greg made a comment that you may need to stop your share and reshare it. Since
Okay,
those gray
sounds
boxes.
good.
Give that a shot.
We will, here's what I'll do is I'll share the web browser. Okay, let's see here. We're gonna stop this. And then we're gonna reshare. I'm just gonna share my entire screen. So does this work for us?
That looks good.
Perfect. Yeah, my apologies for that. Thank you very much for highlighting that.
We're a low stress group, don't worry.
Good, good. So the VGA, what I think really makes their work stand out is that they've developed a series of geo inquiries that exist alongside these static maps. So there's a whole variety of inquiry-based lesson plans that are all story maps. So here's the geography of emancipation. Gives you an overview. It provides teachers with an overview of the standards, learning goals, teacher guides, something that really takes the educator through what a lesson plan would look like. Because it's one thing to show a map, it's another thing to be able to direct students' attention to specific parts of the map, to analyze what are the patterns within this. And so the teacher really has to prime the students in different ways to try to find, to allow them to really see the broader drama occurring in these maps. And so looking at these and considering a state atlas model for Iowa, we're open to your own suggestions. We have Amy Logan, who is a collaborator with me, who's working with Iowa State Extension, and trying to find ways to get good geography in the schools. And we see this state atlas model as one potential avenue. So some of the qualities that the California, Nebraska, and Virginia atlases have is that they don't just include maps, they also include guiding questions, they connect it with standards, they provide some more context about the data that get collected. Not only that, they include landscape photos, so it's not just maps, they do include some dialogue about what's going on with the geography of that state. They have simple layouts and symbology to make these maps accessible to students across grade levels, and then lesson plans that help teachers actually deploy this. And I really like the idea that these maps can just be repackaged in interactive ways. So some good possibilities for us to work with Esri products to do that. And so these resources are wonderful. They're powerful because they are freely available. And we can draw from existing resources and funding to perhaps curate a series of physical hard copy atlases as well as online atlases that can be printed out on demand for teachers. Okay, so what I do like about this, and this is underscoring something that I said in the previous, in the beginning of the presentation, is that the major source of concern among K-12 teachers in Iowa and elsewhere is a lack of pre-service and in-service preparation for teachers. And so what these atlases can do is provide a really helpful step-by-step way for teachers to integrate geography into their existing curriculum, no matter if they uh, aren't don't have time to fit geography into the curriculum. This state atlas could have a series of maps that could very much tie directly into what they'll be teaching. Okay, so we also want to recognize that teachers can't take these maps at face value. A common thing among teachers is that they'll put up a map and they'll expect the audience to know what the map is trying to say. And so these state atlases can allow for them to kind of prime them to figure out, okay, what types of questions should I ask when it comes to this type of map? And ideally, it would be wonderful to have these atlases to where a student can take them alongside their planners and their other things from classroom to classroom and use that state atlas throughout the day. In math, they could measure distance over space. In their literature, their reading classes, they might want to look at a map about the alums of the Iowa Writers Workshop. I mean, what a wonderful resource that Iowa has for that. And then in the sciences, being able to interpret maps of Iowa's natural resources, its weather, its climate. And so what we're hoping to do is team up and work with Iowa educators and GIS professionals to develop a prototype of this atlas for 2024. We're working towards developing a template that is unique to Iowa. We're working on outlining topics, and Amy Logan has been wonderfully instrumental at that. We're looking for other collaborators and then sources of funding once we actually get this atlas drafted. How can we be able to fund the mass production of these atlases for schools? So if you have any feedback, we're more than happy to provide that. And what I'll do is I'll include a link to this presentation in the chat here right now. And with that said, I'm happy to take any feedback or questions.
Thanks for that link. So is this, okay, so I haven't clicked on the link yet. Are you looking for, like, can people edit it? Or just how are you looking for feedback?
Oh, feedback either through email or through
Okay.
just either a chat message, or if you'd like to unmute your microphone, you're more than welcome to contribute.
So Jay asks, Thomas, can you share the Nebraska Resources website and that story map that you used to present
Oh,
today?
of course.
And I'll
Yes.
include that when I send out a copy of the video. I'll include those supplemental information, including the one you would like some feedback on and your contact information.
Wonderful. Great. And so when you access this story map, the links here, if you ever see a hyperlink here, that will take you immediately to the Nebraska State Atlas, the California Geographic Alliance. That is hyperlinked. That will take you straight to the atlas there. Perfect. Yeah, thanks for the question, Jay.
So how is information updated on this atlas? What's the plan for keeping it going and not having it become stale or outdated?
Well, the main thing that we want to do is start to get a list of collaborators, because what really worked for the Nebraska Alliance is that they had somebody who worked on the atlas by himself, Dr. Patolis. And one of the issues is what happens to those maps when he decides to no longer include, or additional additions. And so what will be nice is if we have this be kind of a collaboration, there could be multiple folks who have access to these data, just in case one of us, ends up having a busy year, we don't have time to update the atlas. We can be able to rely on a network of GIS professionals and geography educators to help work through this. That's a great question, is how do we really preserve the longevity of this atlas rather than make it a one and done kind of deal?
The eternal question.
Yep.
So what kind of feedback have you gotten from people outside of the world of universities and education?
So the main feedback that we've gotten is that there's an interest in not just developing state atlases, but to try to figure out what works across grade levels. Because students at different grade levels will be able to interpret information differently. And so, what does a lesson plan look like for K through 3 as opposed to high school? Because we can certainly try scaffolding that information in different ways. And so we have to really be mindful of, you know, not just putting out a state atlas and then patting ourselves on the back, but to really find ways to evaluate the effectiveness of this. And so that will be a next step for us is to find ways to survey teachers, see what works, see what doesn't, and then communicate that to the broader community. That's been one principal source of information that I've received from folks in Minnesota and Michigan and elsewhere regarding the state atlas. Not only this, what is wonderful about putting up PDFs of these maps is you could do really creative things like buy a banner that custom makes specific types of maps. So this is just an old map that I had produced through banners.com. And so these PDFs can be used to visualize geographic information on various types of formats. What I like about these banner style maps is that you can be able to use other types of three-dimensional objects and place them on the map. So it allows for a more tactile, tangible form of learning.
I assume that's usually a bigger deal with the younger grades.
Oh yeah, yeah, but the older grades, they get a kick out of it too. Yeah. Uh, we've had the Iowa Giant map quite a bit. All right, there's a familiar name, Barry.
Hey Tommy, with this project, is there a plan to have like a digital counterpart? Because I know that getting the funds and the maintainability of a paper product is hard to keep up with, and
Yeah.
that's how we ended up with all these outdated atlases in a lot of classrooms. So, is there a plan
Yeah.
on maintaining like a digital kind of counterpart for it, or?
Yeah, I think that's going to be our first step, Barry, that you make a great point. Right now, Virginia Geographic Alliance, they're still seeking funding for that initial seed money to actually produce physical copies of that. And so that will be one of the challenges that we have to kind of look for is to identify good sources of funding. But what is really nice is Esri has got wonderful online web mapping products that we can be able to use. And I don't see the issue with making those data, available in other ways. So if somebody wants to make a map in a high school GIS class or something like that, they'd be able to have access to that.
Yeah, I've
So
Perhaps
noticed even
this,
in my
yeah.
workplace, we've been moving away from making paper map books for navigation purposes. So.
Yeah.
I know having stuff on hand is helpful, but spinning up a digital resource quickly is also really nice to have.
Oh, most definitely. You bring students to a hyperlink where they can use a QR code. It just makes things so accessible, especially if students have a Chromebook that they can kind of work with. And having that web-based mapping experience, it provides a different learning experience for them to go explore around and things like that. Uh, Penny mentioned perhaps this project would qualify for an IJIC grant. I would love to see that as a possibility, and that could be something that I could follow up with Amy Logan about.
definitely. I have a question. When I think of an atlas, I always think of like the traditional atlas of like landforms and economic data. And it always seems like the sources of these maps are always government agencies, public sources. Are there any private resources that you'll be utilizing, or is it the plan to stick to more traditional public source data and maps?
Ideally, public source data, but we're still in the exploration process. We're kind of ironing out the specific types of maps that we're wanting to look at. I don't have any potential private sources in mind, though Amy might have more information about that.
Somebody asked, Jade asked, what is the plan for finding experts in each subject matter area? Who, quote, vets the atlas maps for each subject?
That's a great point. What we could do is identify a collection of teachers who can review this map and provide commentary on it. I'd like to see that, and I'm not sure exactly what the process would be for vetting each portion of it. But what I can say is that we are well connected within the geography community. We can be able to vet this, use this to vet this against, professional geographers who are in my own department, for example, in the Department of Geography at the University of Northern Iowa. That's one possibility. It could also be something that we can do over time, where we have this initial pilot edition and then use that as a chance to receive feedback, because chances are, even as much as we try to account for every single possible detail and possible issue, teaching in the classroom can be chaotic, and so new information will likely arise as a result. Looks like Barry would love to volunteer time to support this effort. Thank you very much, Barry. That would be wonderful. Please do. Let's follow up. And it looks like Amy said, in the past, Esri has offered funding for developing geo inquiries for individual states. Yes, so Esri would be another good possible funding source for this.
So Thomas, I've noticed, at least with some of these atlases here, that they're more set up to be, physical maps, political, social. Is there any thought about switching it around maybe for the atlas, instead of being like more grade level, like, hey, for, elementary, or, change it on its head? Because then you can have the, the advancing of cartography, you can have more complex maps. And because like at least in the sources you were showing, I wasn't seeing that in the cursory glance.
Yes, I would like to see that, because, for example, in K through 3, a really good activity that you can do with students is, let's say we have, a map of the United States, and we have the principal sources of agricultural production. So corn in one region, you know, alfalfa in another region, things like that. And you have symbols that pepper the map. And what students can do is actually go through the process of drawing circles around like symbols that look the same, and develop regions based on that, and ask questions like, well, what about the characteristics of this place make it susceptible to growing cranberries as opposed to, coffee or something like that? And so each grade level, you're totally right, could have a series of progressively more complex types of maps. And maybe what we could do is maybe start within something that could be used at the elementary level, and then kind of expand outward from there, and then provide feedback for teachers in middle school and high school on how to be able to incorporate that into their lectures as well. Ooh, we have a Iowa nature series that would work well with maps. I'm going to save this link here. Thank you very much. And Amy provided a Iowa history research grant for authors. Wonderful.
Any other questions, comments, suggestions for Tommy? Well, Tom, thank you so much for sharing this information. I appreciate it. I did want to let everybody know that our next iChick Lunch and Learn is going to be Wednesday, January 24th. We're currently getting ready to set the calendar for the 2024. It's almost here. And the topic is going to be working with layouts in ArcGIS Pro. So that has been something we've had a request for. And so we're going to be putting together kind of a how-to or just kind of like a panel of people that kind of a show and tell. So it should be a little bit of something for everybody. And we'll be sending out information for that. And with that, thank you so much for joining us on this December 2023 Lunch and Learn.
Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate you attending this. Yay, thank you, Jade.